Hello everybody and welcome to the Bourbon Battalion. I'm Bobby, aka Echo 6 Whiskey, and today we're going to do a recon report. Recon report for us is going out and finding new stuff, either new to the market or new to us, and getting the vitals, getting the information from what we think of it, and pass that back on to you guys. So today our recon report is out of Columbus, Ohio. Magnolia Spirits, a newer brand out of Columbus, Ohio. A little bit about their heritage is S&M Pikes was a rectifier out of the Cincinnati area, and they decided that they're going to revive that spirit in their rye and wheater mash bills. In this case, I'm doing the bottled and bond rye. The mash bill on this is 95 rye, 5 barley. It's distilled in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, bottled and finished in the Columbus area, and looking forward to getting into what some of our local craft whiskey is like, or is coming up with new and exciting in this area. So without further ado, let's crack this open, get some recon on it, and get back with you on it. So I can tell you, looking at it right off the eyes, the bottling itself is very nostalgic. You can see that it is just a really nice looking bottle. An old-timey feel when you look at it. Just looking at the light, the color, I definitely think it really, to me, it looks like it's maybe a 6 to 8 year. It looks darker than you would think for a typical rye, but not as dark as a bourbon. So it's got good eyes. The bottle's pleasing to look at. For those of you who want to know, it has a pretty decent cork. I don't have a problem with the cork. So let's pour this and see what got here. I always do just a little dab of whatever drip comes down up around my mustache, because I'd like to see how fast that opens up. It gives me a good indicator of what this might be if I give it time. And you know, when you're sipping, it's always important to get your first sip in, do your first tasting, but you always want to go and get a second pour. So a couple things we do here. We always do a recon report. We have our full frontal assault, which is our first pour. Our second pour is an about face, making sure that we go back to it again. And then we always do what we call a back blast. We make sure that we, after I have our first drink and we've made it through it, we kind of let that glass sit aside and just let it open up. We'll get a second pour, go through a second pour, and then we'll revisit the back blast just to see what it is. So like I said before, on the eyes, it definitely looks, definitely a bright amber. Actually quite pretty. I mean, we know a bottle and bond is at least 4 years. This looks a little older. It's actually 4 years and 9 months, is what they've bottled this at. But if I didn't know that, I still would think that this was a little bit older. For a rye, it just looks like it's got a little bit more age than your typical rye. Not quite like your bourbon, but right in there. On the nose, man, that's big floral notes. Lots of floral. I mean, that's the very first thing I get. Yeah, floral is your immediate one, right? But it's opening up. It's kind of almost like a cold apple crisp. Somewhere around, like if you've had some apple crisp, but maybe it was in the refrigerator and you brought it back out. You still get that hint of like cooked apples, but it's not like really predominant. Maybe some light, very light vanilla. There's definitely a light vanilla in there. Maybe even a spackle and a clove. Yeah, the nose is Very satisfying. Very nice nose. Kind of get a lot of the rye thoughts, right? You're not pulling your basic bourbon thoughts. Normally you'd have like maybe this brown sugar or caramel or somewhere along that. I'm not pulling that at all. This is just a really good smelling rye. Well, let's get it on the palate. Cheers, everybody. That's pretty darn good. Got pretty good mouthfeels, really tingly. You can definitely tell it's a higher proof. I might even say that it feels like it might be a little bit higher, even though we know it's bottled and bond, we know it's 100 proof. It has great mouthfeel. Pretty sweet on the tongue to start with. Your very first one is pretty sweet. Almost get like this hint of maybe like a very, very, very light, a very light maple syrup, like out of the lines, not finished that you buy in your store and that stuff. Just this real light, mapley. Yeah, and everybody has a different thought. Whatever your palate tells you you're tasting, that's the right answer. There's no wrong answer. Everybody has their palate adjusted to things that they remember in their life, the way they grew up, things they've tasted, and however you've trained. I particularly, almost every time I'm ever on a rye, something about the rye grain, I almost always pick up an oatmeal. So if you always hear me say, oh, it tastes like a light oatmeal and all that stuff, it's just ingrained into my palate, and it's something I always pick up on a rye. But understand, there's no wrong answer in what you're tasting. It's definitely pleasant and tingly for sure. I'll be honest with you, for it being a bottled bond rye, if you didn't know any better, you'd almost think that you were tasting a boo rye. Almost. It's a boo rye contender on a blind taste. That's a pretty good, nice finishing body, mouth feels. This is a nice rye. Starting to get, some of the oaky feel. I'm definitely pulling the age now, especially on the finish. I'm getting a nice, good finish. I get a little Kentucky hug. I'm not getting like this big hug, just a really nice finish that's coming down through there. And that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. I always judge how I think something is based on, is that something that I would drink? Is it something I would buy again? Or is it something I would pursue? This is the only bottle I have. I absolutely will get another. I have no problem having this open and sharing with friends on the bar. This is a good rye. Especially if you have like an introductory level person coming in with a rye. Even though it's a really high mash bill, man, does it have great flavors. They're gracious enough to give you a lot of information about their product. This is a number 4 char. Number 4 char is very typical to a lot of the bourbons. A lot of the bourbons, I think most of your Buffalo Trace products, all are number 4 chars. Your Beam chars are all number 4s. So with it being a number 4 char, I think that's why I'm getting this boo rye type of feel. It's a rye, but man, I'm getting some really good sweet tones underneath here. All right, I'm gonna set this aside for the back blast. Put it over here so we can see. We'll come back. We'll come back to that. We'll get a fresh glass here. Kind of let that sit for a little second. Also, if you like this, I appreciate likes. If you want to subscribe, there's more to come. I promise I'm getting off this cell phone soon. Like I said, I have all my product. I'm just waiting on my computer to get here that I'm having built for this. I have a lot of stuff waiting for content. I have some collaborations I'm working on, and some different experimental stuff that I've been working on that I found some wild, interesting things that we can do with bourbon. There's a lot of blending techniques and that stuff, but there's also some other stuff that I've been working on. I've been working on it for a while, and I think you're gonna like it. So stay tuned. It'll be coming soon. All right, so we know that looking wise, it's a nostalgic bottle. Looks pretty. Color, darker than a rye. To me, it looks like it's a darker, maybe a mustier, copper that would put me along a little bit bigger age statement than I thought in just the 4-year. It had great viscosity on the legs. You could see the big, thick legs as they were coming down, nice and slow. Looked really good. On the nose, it immediately is floral. That eventually changes a little bit, and it starts coming into this this lighter, sweeter type of, like not a toasted marshmallow, but maybe like some very light maple syrup just drizzled on some fresh oatmeal. You just have this really pleasant and enjoying palate going on. It's definitely tingly, so if you like your mouth feels and that stuff, this hits all those targets. The finish is good. You start pulling your oak characteristics off the back. Still a little surprising. It tastes a little older than I thought, and I think that's from the number 4 char. Now we're going to go into our second pour. Always take the time to do a second pour. Too many times that me and the gunny, my brother, have sat and had something, and we're like, wow, let's make sure that we finish with something else because we want to make sure we have a good night. But we always force it. We always force the issue, and we always have a second pour. Thankfully, we've done that on many occasions, found out, wow, there's some really good stuff we would have passed up on our initial palate. That's not good enough. These people spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money into making a good product. You need to give it the due diligence to give it a solid try. Don't ever just take your first initial instinct. Second pour. Cheers, everybody. Wow. I'm telling you, second pours are the best. Don't let anybody ever kid you. Your first pour is never, ever as good as your second pour. And then you start getting the full characteristics of this, right? This has kind of changed for me. It still feels like a boo rye. It really does. But it's like a hot buttery cinnamon roll. Just more focus on the butter on the sides, like the sides of my tongue feel like I've just had a buttery cinnamon roll. There's definitely cinnamon notes. Cinnamon for sure. You get some nice cinnamon notes. You're still getting a grain note, but your cinnamon notes are coming in really strong right now. Even the nose has gotten a little sweeter. It's kind of awoke. And my body isn't, my mouth and my palate and my nose and my olfactory nerves are all getting accustomed to what I am smelling, what should I be smelling. So now I'm getting the fuller range of it. It's still warm though. It still has a good tingly sensation. It's still warm. You can tell it's still a higher proof. Not super bad, but it's very pleasant. This is a pleasant drinker. I would put this in the category of this could be dangerous. You might find yourself sitting there sipping and getting an eval of it and saying, hey, this is pretty good. We should try this a little bit. And next thing you know, half the bottle's gone. Now, I know that's true, and I know that's a fact because half my bottle's gone. Now, that's because last night, the gunny came over, and I said, hey, we need to go through and do this, the new Magnolia spirits out of Columbus, some due diligence. They're good people. They've been very good as far as communicating and stuff back and forth. I appreciate that. I'm sure that anybody that wants to sample and try their stuff, they're really good people. I will say, without a doubt, price point wise, I think this is fair. This is a fair for price point. It's right in that $50 range, and I'd pay $50. I'd pay $50-$60 for this. I have no problem with what I had to pay for it if I went to the store and got it. It's a good drinker. So with the whole blend world going crazy right now and all that stuff and these boo rye things, this is not a boo rye. Let me make sure I say that for sure. This is a 95% rye mash bill with 5 barley. But man, that number 4 char did it some really good justice. And I'll tell you what, it's just a nice covering mouthfeels. Comes in, you get these like incredible sweet notes, but they're light. They're really light sweet notes that are kind of like under the surface. You're like, hey, there's something really pleasant here, and that's really kind of enjoyable. I'm not overpowered by it. I just think, wow, that's pretty darn good. Yeah, definitely don't let the first rye ever fool you, or the first pour ever fool you. I thought this was pretty good the first time I tried it. As I did a second pour, it became a really good rye. I know that I said that second pours are important. They are. Always give them due diligence. And don't be worried about what it is you're tasting. Think of what you're tasting. If you want to advance that, then go get a flavor wheel and stuff like that, and buy the ingredients and go and practice on them. But listen, I'm perfectly happy with someone telling me, hey, this tasted like marshmallows from Lucky Charms. If that's what it tastes like to you, well, that's the right answer. So, and quite honestly, it's more entertaining. So, but yeah, for this right here, for me, I could sit here and have a cigar, sit here with a buddy, and we'd probably finish the rest of this. This is a really good overall spirit. Magnolia is doing a great job down there. I look forward to trying the rest of their line. They do have some non-bottled and bond spirits, and then they have their Weeder project. So I look forward to trying those. The Magnolia bottled and bond rye, give it a thumbs up. Very, very good. Mellow it out a lot. Man, it's really good. I mean, that's pleasant. That's pleasant on the chew. You still get the like slight tingles that you would expect around your gum line and your mouth salivating a little bit in the back. which is, for me, I get that with, a little bit higher, a little bit older, especially the mouth, the saliva in the back. I usually get that with some age statement. And combined with the 4 years, 9 months bottle and bond project they did with a number 4 char, that explains a lot of why that looked a little darker, a little bit older, because it's not your typical rye color. It's a darker than rye, but not quite as dark as a bourbon. So that's why I think my original notes when I went through it and that stuff, I was like, boo rye, boo rye, boo rye. So, but really, really nice. All right, so back blast. We always let just a little bit of it sit in the glass. And when we do that, we do it in the idea of saying, hey, we want to see what this might be if we leave it out a little while. Excuse me, it's not a long time, but a little while. What would it be like if we decanted it, right? And so it's hard to see, but I have a bunch of crystal decanters behind me. I always have common 4 things that are always decanted on my bar. I always have a straight bourbon, a rye, a wheater, and a scotch. Mostly because, I like to see things, how they change as they open up. And quite honestly, we go through them so much, they're not usually there terribly long amount of time. If any of them make it a week or 2, hey, they're doing pretty good. So let's go back to the back blast. This has been sitting out for a little while. Definitely don't have to swirl it. I think it's just a thing that some of us do because, I don't know, we've done it with wine or whatever. It does help you open up a little bit, but probably the most important thing when you're sipping is sniffing is making sure that you go center with both nostrils, right and left, and keep your mouth open. You don't have to breathe through your mouth. You just want to keep it open, right? Because they're linked. I mean, I still have a floral note, no doubt about it. I still have florals. I mean, this is a really consistently good bourbon from the first drink all the way down through the second pour to the back blast. Yeah, it's consistent. It's consistent. It's still good. I still pull those light oatmeal undertones. I also pull that cinnamon and spice. Maybe a smidge of clove. Clove has that harsh. So like when you think of cinnamon, you're like, hey, I like cinnamon. You're like, clove is to cinnamon like stout is to a basic lager. You're like, hey, I'll take a Bud Light and I'll take a stout. And you're like, oof. So, but nonetheless, yeah, this is a really good rye. I absolutely think it's worth purchasing. I have no problem having this on the bar. I have no problem being in my rye decanter, which as soon as it's almost empty, this may be what goes in my decanter next. So look up Magnolia. They're out of Columbus. We know what goes on over in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Nothing wrong with that. How they're finishing it, what they're doing with it after that is brilliant. I think it's a very good bottle de Bond rye. Remember, don't ever go by your first pour. Get through your pour. Check your nose, check your palate, check your finish. Do all those things and then re-pour it. Go through it again. I know we did that last night, me and the Gunny, and then we was like blown away at this guy just keeps opening up. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate you taking the time to check this out. This is what I do. I love everything about sipping and tasting new stuff, old stuff, going back and trying stuff, and giving a real world view of would you want this on your bar or not. Everybody's got different profile tastes. I'm just going to give you the best that I have, and what I think as far as what me and my brother the Gunny have been doing for years, and hopefully you like it. I look forward to doing a lot more of this. I look forward to my live channel. So jump over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'll get back with you soon. So from the Bourbon Battalion, we always say we're choosing to serve is a sacred choice. Thank you, and have a good night.